So the first question is, what do you think is the triumph and tragedy of Rosalind Franklin?
Rosalind Franklin made the most important discovery experimentally that happened in life sciences in the entire century of the 20th century. Namely, she did this amazing work using X-ray crystallography that figured out that DNA was a double helix. That was her work. And she should have been recognized and honored for the rest of her life. But sadly, she died of ovarian cancer just a few years later, missed out on the recognition, didn't get the Nobel Prize, which went instead to Watson and Crick.
Why did the discovering of the double helix structure matter?
We knew over all of human history that heredity is important, that information must somehow be passed from parents to children, but we didn't know how that worked. What was the chemical basis of life? There must have been one. And so in the 1940s, it was figured out that it was probably DNA was the carrier of that information, but nobody had a clue how that could work until the structure was figured out, until the double helix emerged, until you could see that the information was carried in a series of bases, kind of like letters in an alphabet, just 4 of them. None of this made sense. And now the light dawned and the secret of life emerged. And from that has spun a vast number of insights about basic biology, but also about human medicine, all coming from that double helix discovery.
Considering her research on DNA and viruses, where would the world be today without Rosalind Franklin?
Well, her work basically showed experimentally that DNA had to be a double helix. It was Watson and Crick who saw her data, who figured out how to build a model of that. And that made it possible for recombinant DNA to happen, for the biotechnology industry to emerge, for things like precision medicine to happen, for the Human Genome Project to come along, which I had the privilege of leading. All of those things are built upon that discovery. Now, maybe if Rosalind hadn't done her experiment in a few more years or a few more decades, somebody else would have figured it out. But the point is, she did it first.
How does the NIH today relate with Franklin's work?
The NIH, the National Institutes of Health, which I'm the director of, is the largest supporter of medical research in the world. So we do research on everything from cancer to HIV/AIDS, to heart disease, to autism, you name it. And an awful lot of what we're learning about causes comes down to hereditary factors written into DNA. And an awful lot of what we're doing in terms of understanding infectious diseases like viruses, they have DNA or RNA too. And if you really want to come up with a treatment, more and more, we're using DNA as the treatment. That's what gene therapy is. So it's everywhere. You walk around this campus at the NIH and you walk into any laboratory and you ask what you're doing, they're probably working with DNA.
And before we get to the last main thing, which is asking you to do a song, is there anything that you think the general public, if there's one thing that you could sort of tell about either about Rosalind Franklin herself or the relevance of DNA or virology, what do you think it would be?
I think I'd want to say something about Rosalind Franklin as a woman scientist. She worked at a time where there were very few women doing what she did, and they didn't always get that much respect. And we missed out, I think, therefore, on a lot of talent that was existing in women scientists because they were often relegated to secondary roles. She was a hard worker. She was independent. She had her own ideas about how she wanted to do science. And she wasn't all that well respected for it during that time. Here we are now, decades later, where many of us are looking at our circumstances and saying, we need more women in science. We need them to be fully unleashed with all of their talent and energy. Rosalind Franklin is a great role model for a woman scientist who just changed everything by being well-trained, creative, thoughtful, hardworking, and having a dream and making that dream happen for her and then for all of the rest of us.